When you see a show go on for a long time, it's usually inevitable that some of the characters, if not all of them, are usually going to have a fall off period. Thomas the Tank Engine is far from any exception to this. There are so many times that some of the best moments these characters will then be contradicted by some of the worst they have. However, it's very, very rare I would ever say a character had a phenomenal first appearance and then literally every other appearance is awful. Take no look further than Iron Arry and Iron Bert. I gotta say, it's actually really impressive that Arry and Bert only ever had one cool appearance. Like, can you really name me any show that had a character have one cool appearance and then literally the rest of them just suck? But what happened to Arry and Bert? Why'd they fall off way faster than any other character in this series? And what's about them specifically changed so much to where they've become so kind of empty as the show kept going, and by the end of it, you kind of forget they were even there? Well, strap in, as we're going to look back through Arry and Bert's mild history across the series, and let's take a look back and see what made Arry and Bert so cool in Stepney Gets Lost, and so lackluster in every other appearance ever. But let's start by talking about that first appearance. Stepney Gets Lost from Season 5, a real highlight of the series. So as the title implies, Stepney gets lost on his way home, and then he finds the grim messengers of doom, Arry and Bert in the scrapyard. They're bound for revenge.
Bye-bye, Stepney.
Now, Arry and Bert don't really do a whole lot in this episode, but the little appearance they have is so memorable. There's something just so eerie and creepy about them. The setting, the visuals, and them being there being like, gotcha this time, Stepney, kind of implies they might have had a history. It does a good job introducing these two. It opens up a lot of questions like, what's their connection to Stepney? Why does this place look so abandoned? Why is everything just so generally scary? And them sending Stepney to his doom is just such an iconic and memorable scene. But of course, Topham saves him because it's a kid's show after all. You can't have Stepney die. But still, this is a very memorable and immediately iconic moment from Season 5. So how did the rest of Arry and Bert's appearances fare? Arry and Bert would return in Season 6's middle engine, and they just kind of became generic bullies. Yeah, they're not as cool anymore. There's nothing really scary or intimidating about them. They're just making engines middle engines. Man, what a downgrade after only one episode. If I have to take a guess as to why this happened to the two, it probably has to do with the series not having a huge amount of antagonists to begin with, and them wanting more reoccurring villain-like characters. And well, why not modify Arry and Bert? And their old personalities, while really cool, don't really work for long-term antagonists of your kid's show. So, I guess you gotta change them to make them feel more standard. And I understand it, I really do. But it's just such a downgrade from what we saw last time. Though I will say, in Season 7, it feels like they were trying to do a balance between the two, have them be a bit more scary in the scrapyards, but play them up to be a bit more goofy.
Oh, are you happy to be here? No! Cried.
I think this could have been an interesting idea if they went further with it, but we literally only saw like a few seconds of it and Fergus breaks the rules. So, I don't know how we can talk about that one. However, Season 6 would become the basis for the Arry and Bert characters in the future. Season 8 would come along, and Arry and Bert would stay their Season 6 counterparts basically for the rest of the model era. You wouldn't really see them do anything more than just standardly bully engines, new or old. They'd start hanging out with Diesel more, but it was more like Diesel was their leader and they were like the secondaries. They'd just make fun of engines together and stuff for a bit. Yeah, it's all just really generic, and it's really weird to watch Stepney Gets Lost and then like Thomas the New Engine or Thomas and the Stinky Cheese back to back. These don't even feel like the same characters at all. But did they get any better in CGI? Yeah, nothing's really all that different in CGI, other than they have voices now. So why did I even make a section? Well, Day of the Diesels came out, and a couple of other Diesels came along. And I feel like Arry and Bert just didn't stick out at this point because so many generic evil Diesels would release. In saying that, though, the Andrew Brenner run made a lot of those Diesels who didn't do anything pretty interesting. Paxton became this lovable goofball, Sydney had this forgetful personality, and they even did stuff with Den and Dart about their anxiety. All those characters were treated really well and were given such meaningful spotlights. Well, except Norman, who honestly cares about Norman. But that brings up the question, why didn't Arry and Bert get anything like this? A lot of the old cast were given new life in general, and Diesel especially was a character they loved using in CGI. So what made Arry and Bert just so hard to touch? Well, the thing is, their old personalities did go a bit far. I mean, they literally were trying to kill someone. I don't think Mattel would even let that happen in a CGI episode, no matter how good the show becomes. But I would also say Arry and Bert kind of represent a very different time in Thomas's history. Keep in mind, season 5 was made to be like this big blockbuster event with all these tones and themes. And by the Brenner era, the show had definitely become a little more, nicer. Obviously, you do get something kind of spooky now and then, but the series is definitely more friendly, and that's not really inherently meant to be a bad thing. Andrew Brenner and his team still made amazing pieces of television. I've talked about them quite a bit. But the show obviously went in such a different direction. Arry and Bert in their old states really just don't fit it anymore. Not to mention, if they wanted to make stories about Diesels, you got characters like Paxton, Sydney, Den and Dart, Diesel, other characters that they just have more things to say and do. And even in the classic run, Arry and Bert just, well, they were kind of a one-trick pony. You can only do Stepney Gets Lost once. You can't really do that one multiple times over. So I just say by the end, Arry and Bert just didn't have a place in the series anymore. So they just relegated the two to background engines. You could say that that's kind of sad, but in this case, they really only had one really good appearance, and the rest of them were just kind of eh. I did kind of like their role in Diesel and the Ducklings, where it's revealed that Diesel likes ducklings and he's afraid of what Arry and Bert would think, only to find out, oh, they're nice. But it's more because of Diesel and less because of Arry and Bert. They did make it in Bubba, though. Does anybody seriously even remember Steam Team to the Rescue? I genuinely forgot these two were in here until I watched it. Also, are they on narrow gauge track? What the? But I gotta say, I think Arry and Bert represent less is more sometimes. That one appearance they had in Stepney Gets Lost is one of the coolest things the series has ever done. And then they have just the rest of the show to themselves. Maybe it's like a Duke situation. Sure, we all want to see Duke back, but the fact he only appeared in 4 episodes kind of makes those 4 really special. Maybe it's the same thing for them. That one episode they got where they were really cool is truly special. But hey, that's just my thoughts on Arry and Bert. Tell me in the comments below, do you agree with me, or do you actually like the bully personalities they had in the later model era? If so, tell me in the comments below. I'm really curious what you all have to say. See you all in the next video. Also, I am getting really close to 2,000 subs, so, you should sub.